Welcome to Profiteers versus the People, the show where we punch up and dispel myths surrounding modern great people.
For the uninitiated, we take the very rich, particularly those with a media presence like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or the Mowbrays, and we put them through our PR torture test and see if they come out on crutches, our PR torture test acronym.
C stands for consumer harm, R for rich parents, U for union suppression and employee abuse, T for tax evasion or tax dependence, the second C for child labor allegations, the H for harassment allegations, the E for egregious behavior after hours, and the S for slap suits and journalist suppression. I'm Money Mike.
I'm Rad Bill.
And...
So, when we last left off, IAC was in the process of taking on a majority stake in DraftStreet. What did this stake cost them? From a monetary standpoint, we have no idea. The info isn't online. The only thing we get from the book is that the amount that went to Mark for ceding control of the company was enough to get his girlfriend an engagement ring and for him to get a bigger apartment. What did it cost them aside from money? Largely the direction of the company. The fate of the number 2 player in the burgeoning sports betting industry was suddenly democratized among a team of investors eager to recover whatever it is that they'd spent in the first place.
From this point forward, the number 2 player in U.S. sports betting is owned by Interactive Corp., a self-identified anti-conglomerate, meaning AIC seeks to buy companies, grow them, and then sell them or take them public, which is the same thing as private equity, but I guess anti-conglomerate just sounds more rebellious or something.
So how did Brian Schwartz feel about this? Chill, mostly. As the war chests wielded by their competition continued to grow, Brian Schwartz knew they would need the cash infusion to survive. And also, he had no designs on this company becoming some sort of billion-dollar enterprise. He knew the nature of IAC and what they would want to be doing with the company. In his mind, this was a fine outcome. Plus, growing and selling the company was an idea he had entertained since DraftStreet's founding. What's the harm in accepting funding from partners who agree with you on direction? Speaking of direction, part of what made the loss of corporate autonomy more digestible were the tremors beneath their feet that began in 2011. We mentioned this in the last episode, but the industry hadn't exactly roared to life under the competitive leadership of DraftStreet and FanDuel. By and large, the industry was dominated by these 2 players, flooded by a bunch of grifters, seemingly in it to bilk users, and completely devoid of corporates who could wash away the entire competitive landscape of the industry. This, from a marketing standpoint, is something you can luxuriate in.
Yeah, without corporate giants in the mix, FanDuel and DraftStreet can kind of do the unthinkable. They can market themselves as the tried and trusted extra-legal bookie. Yeah. Do they have to compete with each other? Sure, but there's enough market and few enough participants that they're not competing for survival.
And that's it.
DraftStreet had a beer pong table in their office, and I'm willing to bet it actually got used, as opposed to all of the things that offices bought their employees, and then they were like, hey, why are you playing pool? You're supposed to be working.
Oh, we have a gym. We have a billiards room. And by the way, we only pay commissions. There is no salary or anything. Do what you want. The pool table's there and no one ever uses it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet for this group, that was a sticky table.
Oh yeah, no, that was a beer pong table that they used actual beer for. Like it wasn't a water pong table that they had a beer drinking on the side. They were like, no, this ball that's touched the ground a ton is totally cool to wind up in the beer that I drink.
Whatever you want to call this landscape, it went away in 2012 when the primordial sports betting soup birthed DraftKings,
which is not DraftStreet.
Important differentiator.
These guys are about as creative with their naming conventions as they are with their definitions of anti-conglomerate.
Yeah.
I'm still not over that. That actually pissed me off a little bit.
Isn't that awful?
Yeah. Chapter 4. A disruptor enters the space.
I know, right? Pretty much as soon as DraftKings entered the space, Leslie Eccles, and remember this is the marketing person at FanDuel, she knew their presence spelled trouble.
FanDuel, by Edinburgh's perspective, was a scrappy young startup. But DraftKings was a startup.
Yes. As an example, how does FanDuel determine the prize pool for a specific league? Well, there are a lot of moving parts to that equation, but the bottom line on this question for FanDuel basically is this. How many people do we think will buy in? If a contest fills out, the pool of admission dollars can be distributed among the victors. When the contest fills out, that means their budget has all of the dollars in circulation for that contest that they need to have to fulfill their promises. Let's say first place out of that amount of dollars from the buy-ins, first place gets half. I think it's usually like first place gets 18 or 20% or something. Second place gets like 5, whatever it is. Third place gets a small fraction, just something to placate them and keep them playing, and so on.
Yeah, and we have to remember, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Rad Bill, but the nature of sports betting at this point was mostly fantasy football. It wasn't the parlay-based battlefield that it is today.
Yes, that's 100% correct.
Yeah, so it was a lot easier to quantify who gets what because they were just percentages of a whole and people were buying it.
That's it. Forecasts on contestant turnout can come in handy here for sure. If you're a few $100s off one way or another, hey, fine cost for an advertising runway. Like, let's say, the entry fees generated for this contest were, $59,000. Let's throw in the extra 1,000 to get it to 60. That's good for the papers. Right. And for all of our fake news articles that are secretly just fucking ad copy. So, how did DraftKings settle on a prize pool? Well, they picked a number. Oh, I was done, actually. That's all they did. There was no measuring when the team settled on a jackpot. The question was, what plays well? And answering that question meant tinkering with 2 knobs that basically did the same thing. A, the marketing knob. B, the overlay as marketing knob. And almost every investment dollar received by DraftKings went into these 2 categories.
And we all know what marketing is. It's tell people about a thing in a way that makes them want to participate in or buy that thing.
Yeah, make man chase thing. Easy enough.
Right.
We'll talk more about how far they took this. Overlay in daily fantasy sports is the amount of sugar or extra money that the hosting company puts on top of the amount that was generated from the entry fees.
Any discrepancy between the total prize pool and the amount accrued in entry fees, in this case, DraftKings just fucking eats it.
That's it. They're hemorrhaging that money. Fine. Cost of doing business.
Classic private equity startup mindset. Let's just light a bunch of fucking money on fire and see what happens.
How do we make a splash here? Well, burn everything to the ground.
And then rule the rubble.
Yes. Now, if we are to assume that the Eccles family roots are as modest as they would like us to believe, how does FanDuel respond? How can anyone compete on these terms? Simple. They get to work borrowing money the very same way their DraftKings counterparts were already borrowing these huge amounts of money.
Yet, to our credit, Leslie Eccles saw the writing on the wall. FanDuel had been hosting a pretty intimate gathering of market leaders, and DraftKings burst through the front door and bled all over everyone, ruining the party and changing the state of play. If FanDuel was to survive, they would have to get to work bleeding as well.
This dinner party was saw now. In 2012, Jason's company raised around $1.4 million. Not a break from the crowd to any meaningful extent, though they spend it rapidly. FanDuel, noticing the number 3 player in the arena, opened 2013 with an $11 million Series C round.
And Jason's company is DraftKings, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure.
That should have been in there, actually, but it isn't.
You are good. The book makes mention of this, which we haven't covered in the show, and it too will come into play later. Typically, at the Series C, founders have given up any controlling share of the company they run. In this moment, the FanDuel team might have a little bit more money, or a lot more money, but they are far less agile when it comes to controlling their company.
Yep. Founders like to retain as much control or as much of a share of their company as they can, particularly in the early stages. There's that balance that you have to walk. Part of, I think, what made FanDuel vulnerable here is that Nigel and his wife's controlling stake here was gone.
Yeah.
Already.
It's like, if you've seen Shark Tank, they're always negotiating their equity that the shark is going to get. So by the Series C, they've essentially given up the controlling equity. They probably still have some.
They probably have a good chunk. Call it 10% or something. So
right.
Any big decision they want to make, they got to fucking run it by people.
Exactly, which, to Radbull's point, is why they are far less agile than the startup that is DraftKings.
That's it. Yeah, DraftKings has $1 million or 1.4, whatever the hell it is. They don't necessarily need to seek the same permission to spend that money that FanDuel would. In April, DraftKings launched their Series A, which raised $7 million, and this is where the TV ads begin. DraftKings, FanDuel, and DraftStreet had spent aggressively on digital presence and had found considerable footing. Though TV is expensive, the founders of DraftKings figured it was an unconquered frontier and sunk 70% of their fresh capital into that segment.
Which makes sense, because where do people experience sports? On TV.
It's like one of the last things that almost exclusively was experienced on fucking cable until 3 years ago. Exactly.
And, part of what's happening here is that DraftKings was born into a very different economic landscape. FanDuel and DraftStreet were both conceived during the Great Recession. Venture capital dollars around that time were scarce.
Yes.
In 2012, rates were super low and everybody had a bunch of money and they were trying to figure out where to spend it. And DraftKings looked like a good idea.
Somehow. Yeah, this all looked like a good idea somehow. I mean, what's funny is for those venture capitalists and for venture capitalists around this time, more or less, this is a stupid idea that made them a fortune. DraftKings went public.
Yep.
A lot of these guys probably did pretty damn well.
Yeah.
Atop the abundance of capital in 2011, and this kind of plays to Money's point here, internet poker was effectively outlawed, meaning the digital landscape was suddenly awash with aimless people looking to
Game Bull?
Yeah. $1 billion fantasy continually asserts that a key motivator behind a venture capitalist decision to invest in a particular startup, transcending the business model, Albert Chen says over and over again, are the founders. So, with that and the amount of money the venture capitalists are pouring into DraftKings, let's take a look at DraftKings here.
Chapter 5. Who is DraftKings?
Now, a few things about this bunch. This is strange, but there's something undeniably comforting about the industrialization of an extremely destructive pastime finding its roots in the battlefield. The DraftKings gang was US-based and actually gave a shit about sports, which is not a thing with FanDuel. Nigel Eccles is kind of just, they're sticking to football as a British company going, Americans love football. Let's delete that. That was terrible.
that was halfway decent.
To this end, the folks at DraftKings didn't feel as much like an invading force as they did some sort of exotic cancer. Now, what little comfort I can find from this being a homegrown sell is quickly put in perspective by how the founding partners supposedly pitched their startup to investors. Supposedly, the three men, Jason, Matt, and Paul, took a nationalistic approach. This is our story to tell. We can't let the Brits captain this ship. America, basically. The conversation might then go something like this. Venture capitalist. That's all well and good, but what about the question of legality? Jason, the COO of DraftKings in the early days. That's an easy one.
Narrator. It was not an easy one.
As an aside, by the way, the book does this bit a shitload, and it's excruciating. Albert Chen, the author, has fictional scripts baked into the story, and they're written like screenplays, so they sit in the book like this.
Venture capitalist. But wait, isn't sports betting illegal? Jason. Sports betting is illegal, but fantasy sports is fair game, thanks to the Unlawful Internet Gambling Act of 2006. Venture capitalist. Oh, I get it. Hey, you look super cute in that ill-fitting sports jacket. I feel like your girlfriend is probably pretty uncomfortable with you being out in public in such ill-fitting clothes. Jason. I'm actually single, but I'm glad you brought that up. Do you mind if I take this off? Venture capitalist. Sure. Hand the jacket over. The venture capitalist smells the sports coat. His loins quiver. Venture capitalist. Oh, you've got chest hair. I like that. Jason. Yeah, my partner said I should shave it, but it's full and even, and it goes down surprisingly far. Do you want to see? Venture capitalist. My God, you talk and act like a man, but without all those baggy clothes, you're so nubile, so delicate.
That was a good read. Nubile is the most disgusting word in the English
nasty.
language. That's the... Go ahead.
For all of our listeners, Rad Bill put that in the script word for word.
Yes.
And did not tell me. That is the first time that I'm reading that. And I feel sick.
So, by the way, that's the other thing this book and every pro startup piece of writing, for whatever reason, does. At one point or another, it does like a wardrobe assessment of the founder. And it almost without fail describes like some ill-fitting like first communion outfit or whatever. He can't be well
adjusted. He has to be an outsider.
Yeah. Look at him in the clothes he wore when he got confirmed. This is Boston, so everyone's Catholic for sure. Now, we obviously took some creative liberties of our own here. So here are some clarifications. The Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act really was the lifeline that Jason latched onto continually when he got that question. Now, whether or not that law actually gave them the free rein he claimed it did is a question we'll leave to the lawyers. Lawyers, the comments, por favor. Now, if I were to point to anything and declare Trojan horse, this law would be it. It's a stupid technicality, undoubtedly bought and paid for by a pathetically small sum of lobbying dollars. DFS is not a Trojan horse. It's the thing coming out of the Trojan horse. This is the Trojan horse. Now, whether or not the ill-fitting outfit is a creative liberty of Chen's is anyone's guess, although in this case I'm more inclined to believe it than I would be were we covering a Mark Zuckerberg type where there's huge money everywhere. You see, once again, none of our founders appear to be coming from that much. It doesn't appear that any of the founders enjoyed a fabulously wealthy childhood. Take a look at our sources. We scoured the internet. We scoured what we had. I hate Albert Chen's commentary on all of this because it's so uncritical. But take a look at our sources. Let us know if you find something to the contrary. It'd be awesome if you did. something else you might notice is that we honed in on Jason in the titillating yarn we spun earlier, and that's for good reason. Although Matt Kalish conceived of the idea, after a few meetings with potential investors, it was made clear to the team that Jason was the natural pick for the leader among the three. Now, why was he the natural pick? As far as Chen is concerned, there are a few reasons. Jason has a very short temper, flying off the handle frequently and repelling employees. Quote from the book, "Not the kind of founder you'd want to grab a beer with." That is a diagnosis by
dude.
Albert Chen.
What a bummer.
And it's given as a positive. Like, you always get this description of a charismatic leader, and more times than not, they just describe whatever the person is like, even if it's rock bottom fucking terrible like this guy is. Perfect for a CEO.
If anyone ever described me as like, yeah, I wouldn't want to get a beer with that guy. As someone who doesn't drink beer, I would be remarkably offended.
That would really hurt my feelings.
Yeah,
Leslie Eccles,
I might cry about that, honestly.
Yeah, Leslie Eccles unironically recommends this book to people. I don't know if Jason Robbins does. I don't see anything where Jason's like, yeah, and read that book that says I'm not a fun guy to be around. Chen also seemingly brags about how vindictive Jason is. Jason apparently spoke openly about keeping a mental list, or maybe they use the term list. And I'm assuming, and it might be a mental list, I need to go back and read this fucking book again. Please, just have mercy. He keeps a list of everyone who ever turned him away or blocked his desired path to success.
So he's a fuck.
He's a fuck. He's a monster. Stunningly, Chen's assessment here is shared. After an unsuccessful pitch, Jason winds up connecting with the VC who turned them away, and when he asks why, because that's, this is someone on his little list that he actually figured deserved confrontation, the VC explained that he thought Jason should be the CEO instead of Matt.
So like, if they're assuming that there's ever like a traditional interview route for like a CEO of a company, like, does the recruiter call you after and be like, hey, bud, so listen, they said that you weren't very vindictive and they'd love to grab a beer with you. So for that reason,
you didn't even mention a hit list of any kind at all. And
yeah, they just think they think that you're too human to be a CEO. So
yeah, if you heard Peter Thiel, look at Peter Thiel, and next meeting or next pitch, maybe try and channel some of that Peter Thiel energy. Make it feel like you're going to kill them with a space laser. So, Matt Kalish was CEO because the project was his brainchild. The idea of ceding the top spot to Jason was appalling. And by the way, Jason went to him and brought the issue up to him after this conversation. Although Matt got pissed off and left, he ultimately did allow for Jason's ascension. Paul, the third founder, however, was pissed off about this development, and he and Jason would spend the next few years fighting over everything they could possibly fight over. So this is your founding team. Take my money, please, I guess. The following year, 2014, the founders at Draft Street, which, again, the number 2 player in the industry, Draft Street, DraftKings, different companies, began entertaining the prospect of an exit. This dumb and horrible industry, like many industries in the U.S., was falling victim to disruptors, and upon reflection, Brian and the team made it up in their mind that they didn't have the chops for the new landscape.
Basically, if Draft Street wanted to stay in the game, they were going to have to get rid of all the beer pong tables, and for them, that just wasn't in the cards.
That's not something they're going to fucking do.
Yeah, dude.
They're
here to play beer pong at work.
Though they mulled the prospect, FanDuel ultimately decided against buying the runner-up. You see, after some analysis, Nigel and the gang had determined that if they went ahead with the acquisition, something like 20% of the customer base would carry over. Now, while 20% represents a boost in the user base for sure, and a cookie they could slap out of DraftKings' mouth, that juice, in their mind, wasn't worth the squeeze. Unsurprisingly, DraftKings was the next player sizing up Draft Street, and they were considerably more attuned to the prospect of taking risk. They are a startup. Jason Robbins gets the call from Brian Schwartz and invites him to the office. Upon his visit to the DraftKings office, the differences between the two companies became obvious. Where Brian ran a frat house, Jason was running a startup. Dozens of employees buzzed around, working tirelessly. There are quants rambling, high energy, blah, 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 startup shit. Everyone's working and quote unquote grinding. But crucially, startup energy like this demands startup money. And on the financial side, it soon became obvious how DraftKings was raising the money for an operation like this. You see, Brian Schwartz had a customer LTV, or a lifetime value, pegged somewhere between 200 and 400. This is the number they were using when pitching investors and how they were placing their valuation.
Brian, we're forecasting a customer LTV of around $200, which justifies the amount we're seeking because each customer costs just $120 to sign up. Therefore, if you lend us $1 million, we'll be able to turn it into about $1.7 million. Venture capitalist. How exciting. You look pretty warm in that baggy, ill-fitting sports coat. Why don't you just hand it here and stay a while? Brian, I thought you'd never ask. The venture capitalist becomes aware of the seam in his boxer shorts as he buried his head ravenously into Brian's coat. It felt wet. Ew. His wife never made him feel that way.
Now, by contrast, DraftKings was pitching investors with a forecasted LTV of $600 to $1,000.
Jason, every customer we acquire is going to make us $1,000. Was that Gilbert Gottfried? Jesus Christ. I can't do it. I'll just go back to the high, nubile voice. Okay. Jason, every customer we acquire is going to make us $1,000. Red Ventures VC. Stuff me right here on the boardwood room table, you filthy fucking animal. I'm the Thanksgiving turkey this year. Jason proves to be a truly industrious founder as the two make passionate love on the boardroom table. The boys at Red Ventures had spent years examining founders, spread eagle on that table, but Jason showed them a world they'd never known. The VC loomed over Jason's young, virginal body. And violently erupted, clinging to consciousness and listing gently from side to side as he invested in Jason. First in his right ear, no one could take an earful like Jason Robbins. And then God damn, this is so long. And then all over his petite chest and abdomen. His legs were cold, but he didn't care. His commitment felt safe with Jason. Hell, all of them felt safe with Jason. VC, I love your customer LTV. Jason knew how to please his investors, but now it was time to perform. Everyone in attendance gave... Everyone in attendance? Everyone in attendance, Red? Who else is here?
I assume a full... I don't know how these things go, honestly. I assume a full boardroom.
Oh, my... Okay. Everyone in attendance cheers as Jason peaked. No one could believe how much the young man was giving them. Although their hearts are racing, neither man could deny they felt more relaxed than they had in years. 2013 had given them a great deal to be thankful for. VC. Wow. I wasn't expecting this sort of generosity. Jason. It's more of a demo, actually. Most of what we've generated will need to be reinvested to create more growth. Jason licked his gift off the VC's face, grabbed his baggy sports coat. The VC tongued what little remained of Jason's presentation from the corners of his mouth and promised himself he would pick the remaining flakes out of his hair when he returned home. It would take all night. The other attendees cheered again as Jason left the room. It was the easiest $24 million Jason had ever made.
And scene.
Oh, God. This is going to wind up on the internet, Red Bill.
Again, we're overstating the cum explosions a hair. But what's mixing here are the ideations of completely inexperienced young founders and completely incurious VCs. Red Ventures was aching to get into this space. When a brand new company promised them billions of dollars, they leapt. The end. What this means is DraftKings was able to outraise the largest player in the space that year by almost threefold. That $24 million figure is real.
Yeah, versus the $11 million that the competition had raised. And the competition, it was a Series C funding round. So they were able to retain more control and make more money. But you don't raise this kind of money to buy a beer tap and throw ragers.
That's it.
Not anymore. This is the corporatization of the startup. With all this money, the team would be expected to invest in more staff, more in operations, and by and large, just have more to project to investors.
Yep. This is don't fuck with me money. Like, They want to see results. They want to see people deadly serious. This is part of what propels that I slept on the fucking floor thing. I can all but guarantee you the only person who heard that more than we did from Elon Musk were the people who gave him money. In the end, Draft Street took a bow and allowed themselves to be absorbed by DraftKings. The founders were offered cushy new gigs with their conqueror atop the payout dollars each founder received, which, mind you, were small portions of the undisclosed pot just because they'd given away so much of the ownership. As it just so happened, Jason Robbins, again, the founder of DraftKings, his gamble here paid off. FanDuel, again, had determined that should they buy the number 2 player, just 20% of Draft Street's customers would carry over. In the end, DraftKings enjoyed an 80% conversion. I mean, did they forget to carry a 1? Or, like, I could almost see where the math went wrong. Those are two sides of the same coin. You said 20, it turned out to be 80. Now, was this carryover the result of similar names? It's hard to say one way or another, but FanDuel and DraftKings are now neck and neck. So with this in mind, FanDuel steps up and takes the fucking plunge.
Chapter 6, the arms race.
Now, I'm told that the NFL preseason typically... I was a nerd in school, y'all, okay? I'm told that the NFL preseason typically starts in August. For the 2014 season, the table is about set, and for the first time, neither of the two participants looked particularly inclined to share a single scrap with the person sitting at the other side of the table. DraftKings was now a formidable number 2, and to garnish the acquisition of Draft Street, they'd raised $41 million to prepare for the season. The book explains that they sought $41 million because it was rumored that FanDuel was gearing up to seek $40 million, which, fine. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and you're welcome. I deleted the $41 million fanfic.
Thank God. I don't know if I can take another one of those.
It got dark. Leslie was in it. Oof. Because so much of this money was getting poured into marketing, though, there was an implicit shakeup at FanDuel. These are not tech companies. This is a WeWork situation. It's co-working with an app. It's bookies with a fucking app. The product doesn't change and is by nature cheap. Once you come up with the games, that part's kind of done. Before this, remember, FanDuel was a small but profitable operation. Now, if the team is to compete, the most important thing is marketing and keeping the marketing up with DraftKings. This is how they feel. And what that means is Leslie Eccles, who heads marketing, is now running the fucking company. Out of necessity, any conversations around the company's survival begin and end with marketing, and thus begin and end with Leslie. Now, Leslie is competitive. Note the scrapbooking incident. Jason Robbins is making it clear that his goal is to eat literally everything at the table before the folks at FanDuel can take a single bite. And making matters more expensive, TV networks were allowing DFS advertising for the first time. This obviously played a role in DraftKings' decision to advertise on TV as well. And it means there's a lot more to eat, so to speak. Leslie, as such, revises the advertising budget to $43 million. Where the team's focus in the past were those sketchy testimonials, FanDuel would now be tackling every possible marketing avenue they could. They're in a pissing match with DraftKings. Shamrock Capital, their chief investor, agrees to this. And when FanDuel's customer acquisition exploded, the folks at Shamrock kicked in another $30 million for good measure. Now, though the effort didn't gain much market share for FanDuel by year-end, they hadn't ceded any market share to DraftKings, and the $70 million ad spend had garnered 900,000 new users.
And for those thinking, oh my God, they're spending so much money, they're lighting it on fire again. If you do the math, each user costs FanDuel around $77. With a $200 customer LTV, that's really good.
Yeah, they're doing all right. By and large, if their LTV is right, they're doing okay. As a response, DraftKings prepares to turn up the heat once again, and while FanDuel, ever focused on football, uses the offseason to take a victory lap, DraftKings got to work smattering their name everywhere.
However, if we measure instead by a percentage of revenue or budget, there really isn't another startup we can point to that allotted so much of its budget to advertising. Because what you have here is two companies that do the exact same thing.
Yep.
They really can't differentiate themselves based on platform or even algorithm or math or expense management. Right now, it is who will the potential customer see first.
Yep. In 2014, FanDuel spent over $70 million on advertising on $57 million in revenue.
Wait a minute.
Right? Now, obviously, the startup landscape changes things, and venture capitalists are spending in anticipation of an IPO, not necessarily on the forecasted annual revenue anytime soon. But these are the only companies doing anything like this. The other issue here, and we'll get to this later, and it sort of ties to the next point, is when VCs give you money, they kind of expect you to spend the shit. So there's a short-sighted thing here. We're foreshadowing for the next episode. Jason Robbins is a vindictive asshole, hyper-competitive. Leslie Eccles is destructively competitive. They're pushing for get higher number, but all this money has to be fucking spent. And to make matters messier still, a lot of these largely incurious VCs are accustomed to spending on tech startups, where an advertising budget is closer again to that 10 to 25% figure, and the overall amount changing hands is absolutely huge.
Yeah, these were tech startup-sized war chests for companies that weren't really building anything. Yeah. They only needed money for advertising.
That's it. And while FanDuel poured money into the 2014 NFL season, DraftKings began diversifying, securing a 2-year exclusive partnership with the NHL. Jason surely thought that while the diversified focus would help them competitively, it would also complement any talks of any sort of merger should such talks arise. Spoiler alert, the two parties tried in January of 2015, but both Nigel and Jason wanted to be captain, so they just got back to killing each other.
Quick reminder, by the way, both of these groups suck.
Yeah,
this is a fight where you somehow want everyone to lose.
Yep.
If you like sports betting, These are groups seeking to trap you within their platforms. The goal for each of them is to become an inescapable intermediary or middleman.
Yeah.
If you don't like sports betting, or if you think the cost of addiction is too high for the cost of the returns, these guys are the ones seeking to involve everyone.
Yes.
They are chasing the addicts because that LTV number, that lifetime spend, it is an average. And the average and the median are not similar. The median person probably spends $50, but the average draws that up so high because this is an industry funded by those who are being hurt by it.
Who can't control themselves.
Right.
That's it. In April, DraftKings secures an exclusive partnership with the MLB, and although it wasn't any sort of exclusive, they also turned the heat way up on the NBA. The book spends a good couple of pages early on applauding Nigel's "What so you NFL fantasy guys just sit there and do nothing in the offseason." Yet here it's implied that his own machinery goes largely inert in the offseason. And again, they really try and gloss over this. While FanDuel gear up for football, signing partnerships with teams and so on, DraftKings keeps up. But again, they're eating everything on the side. And as a result, DraftKings is suddenly fucking everywhere. Every billboard, lining every stadium, on everyone's fucking phones, between levels, on whatever fucking game you're playing. Then the real problems for the FanDuel team begin. The airwaves, the radio airwaves, were core to their ad strategy in previous years, but while they paid just $1 million in 2014 for an advertising contract with one of the bigs, DraftKings had gotten a whiff of that, and now if FanDuel wanted to renew their contract, their only option would be to pay the premium to be the exclusive DFS advertiser on these radio stations, and it would have to do so for 3 years and pay $20 million for the privilege. There's a whole lot of fucking money set on fire right there. Now, though nothing had been finalized, in 2014, FanDuel had mulled the prospect of exclusive advertising deals with the big networks, but the numbers were absurd, so they walked. With the prices elevated from negotiations, the thought was that although they wouldn't be signing the exclusives, DraftKings would be equally as restricted on a cost basis as a result of them driving these prices up. Except DraftKings fucking went for it. Well, on the back foot, FanDuel raised another $275 million in July, so now we're talking crazy fucking money. That same month, DraftKings signed an exclusive partnership with ESPN for $250 million, and at the end of July, raised $300 million and secured a 3-year exclusive advertising contract with Fox, who led that advertising round. By the way, there was a $250 million 3-year contract exclusive with Fox that was sort of baked into that deal. Another shocker with $1 Billion Fantasy is that it's also seemingly pro-duopoly, and this is crazy, but Chen bemoaned the prisoner's dilemma between DraftKings and FanDuel here, looking at these huge sums and going, you know, if they're both spending marketing dollars and competing for the same market, customer acquisition costs go up. Why do the two companies have to compete with each other like this? Is this some sort of free market? If they can just work as a team and get to work persuading different AGs, why, the legalization efforts would be far more effective.
No one who touched this book seems to have any respect for the law or our institutions or anything else good.
Yeah. Alas, the two were competitors, and because DraftKings set the stage and picked the rules by which the two companies would have to compete, FanDuel figured it was time to step up or step out. Where DraftKings signed an exclusive with CBS, FanDuel got in bed with NBC. Jacksonville built the Jacksonville Stadium underwent a 3,000-person addition called FanDuelville. Gillette Stadium built the DraftKings Fan Zone. And all of this happened with a complete and total disregard for that which had allowed them such unmolested success, their obscurity.
You see, because of their actions here, DraftKings and FanDuel were to become two of the most famous companies in the country, and neither had the PR infrastructure or the protocol to last very long in the spotlight without a scandal coming to pass. And it's with the fallout of their absurd ad spend that we'll pick up next time.
Yep. Thank you all so much for listening. Join us for the next one where we do the part where these companies become all anyone on TV ever talks about and all you see on any or hear in any medium of media, period. We'll do less fanfic in the next one, we promise. Did you enjoy the episode? Consider giving us a rating on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or liking this video on YouTube. It apparently helps. Did we do just okay? Let us know in the comments. Say, hey guys, as far as podcast episodes go, I chose this one to listen to with my mom, and that was a mistake.
Oh, no, please don't do that. Please don't listen to any of these with your mom. Oh, no, don't do that.
If you have a second, please consider subscribing. It apparently makes a huge difference, though I'm not exactly sure how. Anyways, tune in next time. We love you, and goodbye. Okay, we can lighten the fanfic if you want.
It's fine. It's funny.
I think people will like it. Yeah.
It's funny.